You're listening to the Getting Smart podcast. I'm Shawnee Caruthers. We must bridge the gap between classroom learning and real world applications. By integrating pathway models that provide equitable access to early college credit earning opportunities, we can ensure that all students have the chance to succeed. These models connect education to high demand careers, helping students develop relevant skills and knowledge, making their learning more engaging and purposeful. By exploring how integrated pathway models address the skills gap, we can create a seamless transition from high school to college to careers, ultimately empowering students to become contributing members of their local communities. Today, we're joined by Kathy Goodacre of the CTE Foundation of Sonoma County and two leaders from Elsie Allen High School, a part of the Santa Rosa City Schools District, Principal Gabe Oliveira and Vice Principal Erika Raffo. The CTE Foundation of Sonoma County is a critical part of the Sonoma County, California Accelerate Ed cohort, supported by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Accelerate Ed is built on the idea that high schools can provide early access to quality higher education in ways that incorporate work-connected learning and have long-term benefits for students. This initiative helps state-based groups plan and build accelerated pathways between K-12 education, post-secondary education, and careers. Kathy, Gabe, Erika, welcome. Thanks for joining us today on the Getting Smart podcast.
Great. Thanks. Nice to be here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to chatting with you all. And first, we mentioned the CTE Foundation of Sonoma County, but we need to learn a little bit more about it. So, Kathy, can you tell us what the CTE Foundation of Sonoma County is?
Yeah, thank you. We're actually a unique asset here in Northern California in that we were formed in 2012 as an independent organization, a nonprofit organization, as an economic development initiative, really looking at ways that we can invest and expand career technical education programs across the county in alignment with the regional workforce and economic drivers of the county. A lot of career technical education happens here in Sonoma County and in our 15 public high schools, but they're not all relevant, and they're not all programs or classes that are helping young people get on to the high demand, high wage, high skill careers that are driving the economy and the workforce here. We really believe that all students are, as they're working through in their education, that they really all need to thrive for these rewarding careers that really uplift, of course, their lives, our community, and the economy. So we invest. When we started by investing in career technical education, new programs across the county and through a grant making process. And in the first 5 years, we've made a significant impact in driving programs around the health careers, around our manufacturing and STEM programs. In Sonoma County, ag and ag tech is really big, and of course, hospitality. And we were able to do that by funding and supporting CTE classes at individual high schools. And eventually we were able to support sequence courses. So students not only had an opportunity to take one class within a CTE pathway, but maybe a second class and leading to a capstone. And while that was impactful and effective, we recognized the need to go deeper, a little bit deeper in schools. And so we started talking about whole school transformation in 2019. And that's where I'd say the partnership with Elsie Allen High School and Santa Rosa City Schools started.
And as a result of the work you mentioned, it started with one class and then the second, then the capstone, then I'm assuming some credentials probably follow as well for students.
Certainly looking at what are the programs that are leading to certificates, credentials, but also degrees. I think another role that we have played here in the community and have really been a driving force behind is that the problem with career technical education is more than career technical education. And it's not just about certificate programs or associate degrees or tech trade schools, but it's really about that career connected learning and providing those opportunities for all of our students to connect with the careers and their getting that relevancy. I think you touched on some of these key words and points around our work that's so important that students are engaged, that they see the connection in their classroom learning with the outside world. And it doesn't matter if you're in an English or math class, or you're in a culinary or your shop class. We really believe that students need to make those connections throughout. And by doing so, they'll make better decisions out of high school and lead them to what's most successful and suitable for them, but also aligns with what our drives our local community and economy.
And Kathy, what drives you? How did you get into this
Yeah.
work?
I think like a lot of people, I had 2 different learners in my household, 2 different children, 10 years apart in education, and my first learner student went through 4 years of high school, and in my mind, there was no other way but the 4-year college path for her, because that's what we were all told as parents and students, and we were so driven towards that and fortunate that was a path that she excelled in and pursued and went through 4 years of her college, launched into a career in within the path that she chose. And at the same time, I had this young person coming up that I could see was really going to be different. And for me, I was very concerned. I knew he had a lot of skills and talents. It just school had not engaged him, had not found a way to really tap into those talents. And in a lot of ways, had presented a number of barriers for him. And this, of course, is a student and a family with the means and the tools and the resources to throw at this young person and to help him find his path. And yet he still struggled. So for me, when I first learned about CTE and this organization that was being launched here in Sonoma County as a foundation, my background was in fundraising and nonprofit management. It was a perfect fit, and I was immediately turned on, and it's what's driven me in the last 11 years in this work.
I want to understand, like, how then did Accelerate Ed through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation? How did you layer that upon this work that feels so important?
We launched this work that we called New School Model here in Sonoma County, which was a focus on taking high school and turning it upside down. So a whole school transformation in 2019. And had started to look at what would it take? First of all, who are the willing schools and partners in Sonoma County, from the leadership at the top right down to the site level, who would want to go down this journey with us? We knew it was a long game. And transforming education doesn't happen overnight. It never has. And we knew that was going to be part of the challenge. So we set out a sort of a 10-year course and plan, working with 3 specific high schools. And I'm part of a national network of folks who are like-minded funders investing in skilled trades across the country, led by Harbor Freight and the Eric Schmidt Foundation. And we meet every quarter. And in one of the quarterly presentations, a representative from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, it was their turn to share their work and what they were doing. And they started talking about the Accelerate Ed and the communities that they worked with across the country. I was busy just writing down every word, every sentence, which was everything that we had been saying and that we had designed and that we were hearing from with our new school partners as this is our North Star. And I'm hearing this really big, powerful foundation speak in the same language. And we just got really excited and reached out and said, if you're starting a new network, I've got the right team. We'd love to bring our folks to the table. And so a couple of conversations later, we were invited to be part of the national network.
Gabe, I'll start with you in terms of the pathways landscapes that are offered at Sonoma County. What are those, and what are the opportunities and challenges that exist in that space for you all?
Just to piggyback on what Kathy said, when I took this position back in 2018, I remember one of our superintendents says, you're going to go to the CTE Foundation with the possibility of getting $50,000. And I didn't even know what the CTE Foundation was at the time. And I was lost. And I said, $50,000, I'll show up. Shoot, let's go see what we can do. And ironically, at that time is when we started not only talking about our CTE and our pathways, but also the thought had come about of creating a dual language high school that we had not had here in Sonoma County. And so it all came together. We had an interview with some folks, and then we got the grant at the time. And so We were very pleased with that at the time. And so it gave us the ability to expand a little bit and do some professional development. And again, this was all new back in 2018. I had a superintendent at the time who basically said to me and to our team, create the school that best fits your community. And we got together, we had some ideas, and when you have been in education for so many years and you've been educated in the same way, you don't know how to think out of the box. And that was our main problem initially, that we didn't know. Yeah, we had our ag, we had our public safety. I know for myself, I didn't know how to connect that with not only the students that we were having involved in those programs, but also how do we reconnect it into the community that they work in, that they participate in, that they're a part of. And we dabbled a little bit with some of that funding with some professional development. And then the CTE Foundation thought it was a great idea of my 4-year plan of a dual language high school and kind of building that in with the needs of the community, right? In our community, not only do we need paramedics that are bilingual, we need police officers that are bilingual, we need fire people that are bilingual, we need people in the health and sciences that are bilingual. And as we continue to speak to industry partners, they said we need that workforce. It's a huge need. And so not only were we looking at, again, the vocational part of it, but we're also looking at expanding education for our students where they can come back to the community and be able to help their community.
Erika, anything you want to add to that? And I'll just say that the part that stuck out to me that Gabe said was when the question was asked, what is the school you need to create that works for your community? Why is that such an important question for a school system to ask its leaders?
I think that is the question
Yeah.
to ask, truthfully, because Gabe said we're in the education box. And so we have an answer that the system tells us, but really we need to ask our community what they need and what they want. And Gabe and I did that was when we started working on our graduate profile. We went to the community, we asked, and parents said that they really wanted their kids to be able to give back and to use their language skills. We've had agriculture pathways at our high school. We had public safety, as Gabe mentioned. And just this past school year, we added health sciences. And this coming school year, we're adding an education pathway. And in particular, education and healthcare are really high demand sectors in our county. There's lots of good jobs out there for students if they're interested in that. But beyond that, it's giving kids opportunities to work within their own community, to solve problems in their own communities, because we have an incredible community with amazing assets that the traditional education doesn't tap into.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And Kathy, as I was listening, especially when Erika was just really honing in on the notion of community and how do we keep kids in community from maybe more of an overarching perspective. What are some things from a county perspective that you all are doing to ensure that when students get all of this knowledge, that it doesn't go away?
Yeah. As in leave the county. We have significant challenges here in our region, and it's no mystery or secret that we experience some of the highest cost of living and housing in the nation. In particular, in the North Bay, we had a very significant firestorm here in 2017 where we lost more than 7,000 housing units that we have yet to still recover from. And we're an aging community. We have declining enrollments across the county. And we have a workforce, we have an aging workforce, and we have some industry sectors here. One of them in our skilled trades, construction trades area, where for every 5 retirees, there's one entering the workforce. We're looking at all the infrastructure we're trying to build here and the housing, and how are we going to really build that up? And so it's all about strengthening our community. And I really appreciate what Gabe said about, or maybe it was Erika, what they learned through their portrait of a graduate. And that's how students and families want their students, and students want to be able to contribute back to their community. And as much as we hear and see young people say, oh, I want to go somewhere else, I don't want to come back to my hometown. I think ultimately they really do. They want to come back here, but through a lot of surveying across the county, and we have a really great tool that's called Youth Truth. It's a national program for collecting students' perceptions directly in the schools. We've learned that particular high school students have the highest levels of stress and anxiety about their future than their peers across the nation. And we know that in part it's because they're trying to see themselves living here and not just, living here because they see their own parents struggle. But how are we going to help them see the careers that are going to help lift them up into what would be family sustaining wages and income and growth so they can really thrive here and contribute back to the community? So we're in a grow your own mentality and focus, and that's ultimately the work that we're all doing here together.
Yeah. And Erika, I'm sure some of what Kathy shared has influenced what you all offer at Santa Rosa City School District, in Santa Rosa City School District. So what options existed previously for you all? And then how is this new effort expanding options and opportunities for learners?
A number of years ago, and Gabe can fill in if I'm missing something. A number of years ago, more than 10 years ago, our district adopted a pathway program where students had to complete at least 2 courses in a sequence before as a graduation requirement. Those pathways were loosey-goosey. It could be 2 drama classes, 2 art classes, 2 agriculture classes. They didn't include the certification. They were not the robust version that the CTE Foundation is assisting us with and that CTE is known for in general. We've always had agriculture pathways at our high school, and we developed public safety quite a few years ago. Working with the CTE Foundation, though, we've been able to add the health sciences and education pathways. So the pathway requirement was often waived if a student wasn't able to take 2 classes in a pathway. And then eventually it just really went by the wayside. And I think the difference in what we have now is it's college and career. So our district in particular is making an effort to make sure that any new CTE pathway courses are college preparatory. So they qualify as what we call an A through G course, to make sure that we're preparing kids for both options, because it's up to kids to decide what they're going to do after high school. And it's our job to prepare them for whatever options they might choose. And that's something that's really important to me, is that kids have the options to choose, that we're not choosing for them in their freshman year and saying, you're going to go on the CTE career path. We want them to be on both paths because we know that they are capable of achieving that. And we just have to find a way to make education relevant for them. And these CTE pathways do just that. People like to say stuff to kids, oh, wait till you get out into the real world. Kids live in the real world. This is the real world. And it's our job, as Kathy was talking about before, to bring the real world to schools and to kids so that they can be prepared for what's out there and they can get the opportunity to experience an internship, learn some work-based learning skills. And if a student goes through our healthcare pathway and that's not the field that they end up in, they are still learning incredibly important skills. And I don't know about anybody else, but when you have to sign up for healthcare through your employer, that's a really challenging task. And knowing that our kids are getting some information about that, I think, is just incredibly important to be, an informed citizen.
Gabe, do you have anything to add to what you previously did and how the options are helping students today?
Yeah, I think more importantly right now, the options that we're offering our students, like we stated earlier, are options that our community has asked. And I think of the health and science pathway as an example. And just to touch on both of them, our school is approximately 86% Latinx out of 1,000 students. And healthcare is an important part. Back in 2021, our county did a study on Portrait of Sonoma County. And in the Portrait of Sonoma County, it stated that families on this side of town lived less years than on the east side of town. the education on this side of town, the families had less years of education than the east side of town. And so it was really about trying to balance it out and give an opportunities for our students. I just happened to be able to go to a rehabilitation hospital this past year. Five of the nurses that were LVN nurses there were Elsie Allen High School graduates, and they were graduates trying to get their RN to become registered nurses, but because of the language, they weren't able to do that, so they were being LVNs. Now we can give those students the opportunities while they're here at high school. Again, most of us in the Latino community, we already translate for our parents when we go to the hospital or when there's somebody that's not Spanish speaking there. And so it's building on that. We already have the skill set, not only to translate, we have that mindset that we can go from English to Spanish real quick and be able to not only facilitate, but be able to control a conversation that involves some serious issues within our families. And so, what better way for us to hold on those assets of our students and be able to help them not only to support their families and help their families, but also be able to get a profession or be part of a profession that's going to be supportive to them.
As we think through just the different opportunities that are presented for students, one of the programs that I know that you all have is around the American Rescue Plan and the Golden State Pathways program. Kathy, what are those programs and how are they truly beneficial to students? And then Erika, I'll come to you to talk about what then does the implementation look like at the high school level?
Yeah, Gabe, I think, started off at one of his first responses today with talking about a $50,000 grant that got him to show up to a meeting. And one thing we know is that funding is critical. It can be an opportunity. It can also be a barrier. And it's not the only tool in the toolbox, though, to really make this work impactful in the long term. However, when the American Rescue funding, ARPA, we call it here, came through to our county, the CTE Foundation, because part of our job is to really seek and look for funding, both private as well as public and government funding opportunities to infuse this type of education and workforce education initiatives. And so we had been following and staying atop of how that funding was going to be distributed here in our county, and it was about $30 million. Of course, this is a federal fund coming through our county government. And we had scoped in our mind a different program that we thought CTE Foundation would be applying for and bringing that funding into Education Workforce Initiative that was more countywide focused. But when the RFA came out and the focus, as it should have been, was based on census tract data and really looking at people in communities or portions of our community who had some of the greatest disparate impacts from COVID, Elsie Allen just really spoke to us. And this community that Elsie Allen serves in this portion of our county it just really stood out as the fit. And because we were already working with, in really small ways, I think the largest grant at that point, 3 or 4 years into this work, that we had been able to give to Elsie Allen High School was this $50,000, maybe a $75,000 grant. But here's an opportunity that we could apply for this funding and align with the objectives of ARPA in impacting this community with over $1 million. We joined, of course, with them and some other consultants and wrote the grant and received the funding. And I think we're about 18 months into what was a 30-month funding program. And we were working with 3 different high schools all at the same pace. And I would say when we started this work, Elsie Allen, Santa Rosa City Schools was the furthest behind in that 10-year vision we had to our North Star of the 3 schools. But now, because of this funding and the amount of resources we've been able to provide and fund with this school, they're now ahead of the pack. So I'll leave it to them to tell you what that kind of looks like. But the other piece of it, I think you did ask me about, was the Golden State Pathway, another huge funding opportunity. The state of California legislature allocated $500 million in career pathway development across the state. And this funding that was written in, it was actually proposed and approved back when our state had a $30 billion surplus. And over the period of a year and a half, we're now in a 38, 39 and counting $billion deficit. That new money that they allocated, $500 million, remained. So that tells you what the focus, the commitment from the state level is on developing these pathway models that are aligned with driving our workforce and economic development while we're improving overall student outcomes. The funding is now lining up, I would say, around this work. So it's really giving schools much more power to really be innovative, creative, and redesigning and rethinking their schools.
What can $1 million do?
Well, $1 million can do a lot. ARPA has allowed us to really learn from other schools, what their challenges were, what their successes were, how they managed to do this. I was able to go to Master Scheduling for Equity workshop that was over multiple days, over most of a school year, and really start asking the questions about what are we doing with our schedule? Are we serving students or are we serving adults? Why do we schedule students the way we do? What does that look like? I've been able to make some changes in how we schedule and what we do. And thankfully, I work with Gabe, who's a great principal, who's really supportive of this kind of work and really encouraging to me. And then the other thing, too, is I think there's a skill involved with really looking at pathways as not some extra elective thing that some kids do, but looking at it as something that we want all kids to be able to do. So we're still on our journey with that because it is a complicated problem to solve. But I feel like because of ARPA, I have a lot of resources outside of our school district that I can rely upon, I can touch base with, I can get advice from and say, hey, how did you do this? And get an answer, because there isn't anybody else in our school district doing it to the level that we are right now. And there's a level of expectation on us. I think that we're leading the way and that we need to learn as much as we can so we can help the rest of the schools in our district as we move along. I'm just so incredibly grateful that the CTE Foundation saw this possibility here and thought of us to do this, because it's really opened doors for us, opened my eyes as a newer administrator to, the power that I have and what can I do to serve students better.
And we know that for pathways to be as strong as possible, that they're integrated and that they really tie into the core curriculum and they don't sit just alongside. Gabe, how has the core curriculum been impacted by your pathways work?
In education, generally speaking, it moves at a turtle's pace. It's very difficult at times to get any type of change. We've been able to take, for example, 2 trips to Lindsay, and it's a school in the Central Valley that really focuses on not only obviously transformational education, but lets the students really evaluate their own work pretty much with rubrics that they utilize. Another great example, we've been looking at standards-based grading as a site too. And that is for teachers, it's very controversial. Some of us are so used to a traditional way of grading. And so just to be able to have these conversations right now has been excellent.
You all are collectively doing a lot of work in your area to really make teaching and learning better for students in high school and then beyond. So as you think about the work that national policymakers do around this work and then just teaching and learning in general, what advice would you individually give? And Kathy will start with you, and then Gabe will come to you, and Erika will end with you. But what advice would you give national policymakers about the importance and the need for expansion of these sort of programs?
I think they got to keep going at it. Like I said, we've seen a lot of shift, certainly in the state of California and also on a federal level, this shift for investing in education based on our workforce and economic needs, and seeing that correlation. And so continuing to drive policy, write policy, advocate for more funding to do that work and to incentivize education. They need incentives. We've talked about this already, but we really need to have the policies and the funding in place to support and drive the work. And our employers, they're on board. They're ready to get on board. They want to partner with schools and educators and students and host students in internships and apprenticeships. But they may also need some funding and support for that as well. So any type of funding and policy that can continue to focus and drive on this connected learning format for students and alignment with our workforce and economic needs and staying relevant is going to be critical.
Gabe, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I know in California, I don't know if it's the same in other parts of the country, but in California, the prison system gets a lot of funding from the state based on situations that occur. If we could just utilize some of that funding towards, like Kathy says, incentivizing the work for our students, letting them know there's opportunities, I think not only will our attendance rates go up, but when there is something at the end of this journey for them, a job, something that they have connected with, possibly even a mentor that's going to be able to guide them through that. Again, even giving them the opportunity that if they choose to go to college, that opportunity will still be there for them. If we could take some of that funding to be able to support students while they're not, we're talking high school, but I'd go as far down as middle school, probably even elementary school. I think if we start having those conversations and some funding and some incentivizing for our students, we will see a change in education for sure. It's going to take some time, but like I said, in education, things go a little slow. But if we can start, I never thought that we'd have a dual language school or even a health and pathway or an education pathway. But here we are doing it. So we're like I always say, we're building the bike as we go. And the hope is that the funding is not only there, but can also be robust so we can even look at other pathways possibly in the future.
And Erika, I'll let you share the last thoughts.
I agree with everything that Kathy and Gabe have said. I also want to add that it's not just students and administrators that we need to shift a little bit in education. Once students get to middle school and high school, subjects are siloed. You take English with your English teacher, and then you go to science with the science teacher, and they're not connected. And the integrated pathways allow us to connect core subjects with the CTE pathways, so that once again, CTE pathways are not some extra thing that we do. And by integrating those pathways, not only do the teachers get to see how their subjects are all interconnected, because they are in the real world, they also get to make school much more relevant for students. And we get to connect the dots for students so that they understand that even if they're in a healthcare pathway that's maybe a little bit more science heavy, their English class can be about the literacy that they need in that pathway, which is directly connected to Common Core, which will get them into college. And so once we as educators are able to make those connections, then students will start to see them. And without the funding that we're seeing from these national policymakers, this isn't going to happen. Having teachers go to other schools with us and see what happens when you integrate, see what happens when you're much more student-centered, that changes things, because now we have teachers who are saying, I want to get in on this. And this all takes a lot of money and it's a lot of time, but without that funding, it's just not going to happen. And we need that.
Thank you to each of you. I think collectively, the words that you all said that I think can really sum up our conversation is a relevant journey, like just ensuring that students know that it's truly a journey. And Gabe, you said it does take time, but it often takes time to get things right. And it's important that we make all of the learning relevant for all students, not just some who are on particular paths. So thank you all for joining us today to share all of the great things that are happening in Sonoma County and at Elsie Allen High School. We really appreciate you all sharing.
Thanks for tuning in to the Getting Smart podcast today. We want this podcast to be actionable, insightful, and a great way to learn about what's next in learning. In order to stay on the cutting edge, we need people in the field to tell us what they're hearing, what they're wanting, and what they're needing to learn more about. Got a topic or a guest in mind? Send your recommendations to me, Mason at gettingsmart.com. And if you like what you're hearing, don't forget to leave a review in Apple Podcasts or subscribe wherever you listen. Feel free to share the podcast on social media using the hashtag GSPodcasts. Thanks so much.